Peppa Pig, the eye collector. It all started with a single button. It was just lying on the kitchen table, black, round, with 4 holes. Mummy Pig picked it up, turned it over in her hoof, and tossed it into the sewing drawer. "Strange," she mumbled. "I don't remember this one." The next day, there were 2, in the exact same place, identical, clean, perfectly smooth, as if freshly made. Mummy Pig put them away again, but couldn't recall where the first had come from. By the 3rd day, there were 4. Daddy Pig decided the children were playing a prank, but Peppa only shook her head. "We didn't touch them. They just appear." On the 4th day, the buttons weren't on the table. They were on the floor, next to Peppa's teddy. "George, look, he used to have eyes. Now they're buttons. Small, shiny, unevenly sewn, but tight." Peppa swore Teddy's eyes used to be glass, blue, cheerful. "Maybe he always looked like that," George said, uncertain. But when she looked in the mirror, she could swear Teddy was watching, following her, unblinking. By the 5th day, buttons were found in the playroom, near the bookshelf, and George's dinosaur, his eyes had changed too. Same black buttons, 4 little holes. "Daddy," Peppa whispered, "someone's replacing them. It's just coincidence," he said, waving it off. But that night, the house fell unnaturally silent. No wind, no drips, no breathing. And then Peppa heard scratching, software uneven, like claws dragging across wallpaper. She stepped into the hallway. On the wall, marks, long, thin, deep, and between them, a phrase carved into the plaster, "Now I see." In the morning, in the family photo frame, all the eyes were buttons, even hers. Only the real Peppa, not yet. "It's not us anymore," Mummy Pig whispered. "It's changing us." In the closet, they found a box of buttons, but they were too new. No packaging, as if someone had made them. Here, on the 7th night, Peppa saw a shadow. In her room, thin, elongated, a vague figure, faceless, shapeless, but with claws. And that same dry scratch. She hid beneath the blanket, but through the fabric she could feel the stare. Warm, burning. When she opened her eyes, it was gone. But Teddy had a 3rd eye, right in the middle of his forehead. Daddy Pig no longer looked at Peppa. His eyes were flat, round, black, sewn in. Mummy Pig smiled wider each day, but never spoke again. George cried at night, but didn't know why. And Peppa now carries a mirror, small, round, checks her face every morning, whispers into the glass, "Still mine, still mine." Because she knows one day she'll wake up and won't remember what her real eyes ever looked like. Peppa Pig, the puppet. It had been raining for 3 days straight. The streets turned grey, the puddles deep. Peppa sat by the window, watching the raindrops slide down the glass. George was asleep, and the parents were busy. There was nothing to do. Everything felt quiet, too quiet. "Maybe there's something interesting in the attic," Peppa said to herself, carefully climbing the creaky stairs. The attic was dusty. Cobwebs brushed her ears, cardboard boxes, old furniture, forgotten toys. She opened one box, soft animals, rag dolls, a broken plastic train, and something else. At the very bottom was a doll, made of grey fabric, with thick seams and rough stitching. The eyes, black buttons. The dress, red with a white collar, exactly like Peppa's own. But most of all, the face. It was nearly an exact copy of her own. Peppa flinched but took the doll into her hooves. It was strangely heavy. "Who are you?" she whispered. The doll didn't answer, but its button eyes seemed too focused. Peppa placed the doll in her room, sitting across from her. At first, she just played, but in the evening, she noticed, when she lifted her hoof, the doll's arm twitched upward. When she turned her head, the doll copied her. "Mummy, it moved!" It's just your imagination, Peppa, Mummy Pig smiled. But that night, Peppa woke up and saw the doll by her bed, though she clearly remembered leaving it on the shelf. The doll sat on a chair by the window. Peppa walked closer, and the doll turned its head, silently, wordlessly. Are you playing? The doll didn't move. When Peppa lifted her hoof, it didn't react. But minutes later, she noticed her own hoof was trembling, and she hadn't meant to move it. In the mirror, her reflection lagged, a second or two behind. Peppa woke up. The room was darker than usual. The nightlight wasn't glowing. George slept soundly. She looked in the mirror and didn't recognize herself. Her fur looked grayer. Her ears drooped. Her dress askew. Peppa stood, but her legs didn't move quite right, as if something inside resisted. "Mummy?" she whispered, but no voice came out. Just a rasp. Downstairs, everything was normal. Mummy was making breakfast. Daddy was reading the paper. Peppa staggered to the table. "Good morning, doll," said Mummy Pig without looking up. "It's me," Peppa whispered. "It's really me." But no one listened. On the couch sat another Peppa, alive, real, with bright colors, clear eyes, and a gentle smile. "It's okay," she said. "It's my turn now. You rest." She stepped closer. "You promised," she said. "You found me once, then you forgot, but now you're with me again." Peppa tried to run. She locked herself in the closet, then in the bathroom. But her reflection never came back. It lived separately now, moved without her, looked straight into her eyes. Later, George found the doll on the floor. It had button eyes and a familiar red dress. He picked it up and said, "Wanna play?" And the doll slightly nodded. Peppa Pig, the thing in George's bed. The morning started like usual. Peppa stretched in bed and yawned. Light was slipping through the curtains. She heard the fridge door close downstairs. Daddy Pig was already in the kitchen. She glanced at the bed next to hers. George was still asleep. The blanket covered him almost completely. Only a bit of his head was showing. "George!" Peppa called lazily. "Wake up, it's breakfast time!" No response. She got up and walked closer. "George," she said louder, "get up, sleepyhead." She gently touched his shoulder. It was cold, too cold. A chill ran through Peppa's chest. She grabbed the blanket and slowly pulled it down. What she saw wasn't George. It looked like him. Same pajamas, same little hooves. But the skin was pale, paper white, and the eyes, wide open, staring, unblinking, and completely empty. Peppa stumbled back. "Mummy! Daddy!" she screamed. "Something's wrong with George!" No answer. Peppa looked at the door. It was shut. She ran to it and tugged the handle, but it wouldn't move. Behind her, a shuffle. Peppa turned around. The thing was sitting up. It looked at her. Same eyes, but now there was something else inside them. Awareness, intention. "I'm not George," it said. The voice was wrong, twisted, but close enough. "You remember me?" "No," Peppa whispered. "You're not him." "You left me," it said. "When we played hide and seek, that time, in the wardrobe. I waited, a long time, a very long time." It stood up, jerky, unnatural movements. The floor creaked. "But now, I found a place." Peppa ran to the window. It was sealed from the inside, with paper and tape. "Where's George?" she cried. "He hid too," the thing said. "But worse, he's inside me now." It took a step forward. "You'll stay with me, like before, forever." Peppa turned toward the bed. Something stuck out from under the pillow. A piece of paper. She grabbed it. It was a drawing. Her and George, standing side by side, holding hooves. But George was crossed out. And next to them was another figure, distorted, with a smile. On the back it said, "You will choose wrong, but he will stay." At that moment, the door handle turned. George walked in, the real one. He looked at Peppa, then at the creature, and whispered, "Go away, that's my bed." The thing turned to him. "You slept too long." They stared at each other. To George. Peppa didn't know which one to fear more. I don't know who's who," she whispered. The one who had just arrived looked at her and blinked. She grabbed his hoof. "Run!" They bolted from the room. Behind them, silence. But that night, as Peppa lay in bed, she heard a whisper through the wall. "You chose." But not the right one. Peppa Pig, the numbers. Peppa woke up early. George was still sleeping, gently snoring. She walked down to the kitchen, and then she saw it. Right in front of the door, on the floor, there was a white chalk number. 1. Neat, perfectly written. Peppa frowned. "George, did you do this?" she asked later. George only shrugged. "Dinosaur can't write." Daddy Pig wiped it away with a cloth. "Probably just some silly game," he said. The next morning, a new number, 2nd, same place. Again, neatly drawn in white chalk. This time, Mummy Pig seemed more puzzled. "That's strange. The door was locked all night. Who could have done this?" They erased the number, tried to forget, until the 3rd morning. 3. Now it was in the living room, closer to the stairs. Daddy Pig grew irritated. "If this is a prank, it's getting old." 4th, in the hallway. 5. On the stairs. The numbers were moving closer to Peppa's bedroom. 1 every night, always a little nearer. On the 6th day, Peppa woke in a cold sweat. Something felt wrong. She looked down. 6 was marked on the floor beside her bed, and next to it, a black smudge, like a hoofprint, but too large. The edges were cracked and jagged. Peppa showed it to her parents. Daddy Pig said nothing. Mummy Pig just cleaned everything and threw the chalk away. But it wasn't the chalk that mattered. That night, Peppa didn't sleep. She sat under her blanket and listened. Outside her room, a soft scraping sound, as if something was dragging across the floor. She clutched George. He slept peacefully, like nothing was wrong. In the morning, there was a new marking. On the wall, high up, almost near the ceiling, the number 7, and beneath it, scratched in jagged letters, "You're next." Her parents told her she was imagining things. "Try to relax, Peppa," said Daddy Pig. "It's just your imagination." But that night, it all got worse. She woke up and realized someone was standing by the door, a figure, tall, a shadow, barely visible. Peppa held her breath. It didn't move, but she heard whispers right in her ears, though it had no mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Silence. Then, one step forward, into the room. Peppa pressed herself into the pillow. She wanted to scream, but couldn't. The air was thick, like trying to breathe in syrup. When she opened her eyes again, it was morning. No numbers, no shadow, but on the bathroom mirror, the number 8, and next to it, her hoofprint, only larger, and beneath it, "You're the last." Peppa Pig. The room upstairs. The morning started like any other. The Pig family was having breakfast in the kitchen. Daddy Pig was reading the newspaper, Mummy was pouring tea, George was kicking his legs under the table, chewing toast. But Peppa felt strange. Something in the house wasn't quite right. After breakfast, Peppa went upstairs to get a toy. As she passed the staircase, she stopped. Something had changed. Where the wall used to be above the stairs, there was now another staircase, narrow, old, wooden. She didn't remember it ever being there before. Dust, a faint draft, a flickering light bulb above. The stairs led up to a 3rd floor, but their house never had a 3rd floor. Peppa called out, "Mummy? Daddy?" No answer. George peeked from his room, then quickly shut the door. All day, Peppa tried to ask about the staircase, but her parents kept changing the subject. Daddy talked about the weather. Mummy suggested a walk. George said nothing. When Peppa tried to go up, Mummy gently stopped her and said, "Don't go up there, sweetie. There's nothing there." But that night, Peppa woke up. The house was dark, except for a faint glow coming from the stairs, a steady light from above, as if someone was holding a lantern, and then a sound. Creak, step, pause, and a voice, her voice, software familiar, repeating, "Peppa, Peppa." She got up and walked to the hallway. The staircase was still there, but now it looked fresh, like it had just been built. No dust, no cobwebs. The wood felt damp under her hooves. She started climbing, slow at first, then faster, step, creak, her breath. At the top, a door, old blackened wood, no handle. She reached out and then heard another voice, also hers but off, echoing, distorted. "You wanted to remember," it whispered. "I've been waiting." Peppa froze. She felt something else had followed her up. She turned. Nothing behind her. She touched the door. Inside was a room, empty. Grey floor, uneven walls, a mirror in the corner. But the mirror showed no reflection. She stepped in, and the door behind her was gone. The wall was solid now. Suddenly, a reflection appeared in the mirror. It looked like her, but it didn't move the same way. It stared, then smiled, slowly, widely. It didn't blink. Peppa screamed. In the morning, she woke up in her bed. Sunlight, clinking dishes, Mummy's voice, George playing with his dinosaur. She got up, went to the hallway. The staircase was gone. But when she looked into the bathroom mirror, in the far corner of the reflection, she saw a narrow staircase. And at the top, a girl who looked like Peppa, standing, looking down.